The Carolina Hurricanes had a very busy weekend over this past weekend. We talk about all of it from the goalie carousel stuff to is there momentum building with this team right now as they're on a 4 game point streak. And we look ahead all in this episode of Locked On Hurricanes.
Your Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, Caniacs. I'm your host, Jared Ellis, and you're listening to Locked On Hurricanes on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Hurricanes your first listen of this Monday morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you're listening. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Now, diving into the Hurricanes weekend because Lord of mercy, it was a busy one. And first up, I want to talk about the goalie carousel that is going on with the Hurricanes right now. It is pretty crazy. Yesterday, the big thing was Auntie Raanta. Well, actually, it started, on Saturday when Auntie Raanta was placed on waivers. And it was absolutely crazy to think about that happening. And yes, the Hurricanes need to fix their goalie situation. It has not been great this year. So in that regard, I'm not surprised, but I wasn't expecting Auntie Ranta to get put on waivers and then now sent down to the Chicago Wolves. He accepted that assignment yesterday, and I was kind of surprised by that. Again, it just wasn't the move I was expecting. I was just expecting a trade. I wasn't expecting that at all, and I think that caught a lot of folks off guard. Evidently, kind of caught Auntie Ranta off guard from reports that were coming out. A lot of teammates were kind of consoling him after he was put on waivers, and you really feel for the guy. It hasn't been a great year for him. One thing I saw floating around on social media was kind of seems like time is catching up to him. And I can see that, and that's something that happens with everyone, really, not just goalies and professional athletes. It happens to everyone. Um, Eventually, it seems like it's starting to happen to Auntie Ranta, but he was a professional, accepted that assignment, and we'll see what happens from there. I really hope he can get back on track to the level we know he can perform at, and come back up, and do his thing. But another move that really surprised me was the fact that they called their ECHL goalie up the other day. He backed up last night against the Washington Capitals, and that's an interesting move. I get Ranta isn't really cutting it for you right now, but the jump from the ECHL to the NHL is massive, and I really feel bad for Peretz, when he eventually gets put in. I don't see it being anytime soon. I honestly just kind of see him as just being a body there that they got to have. Um, so I don't have high expectations there. And I am worried for when he does get put in because I don't know how that's gonna go. You remember, oh God, was it last year or the year before, when they brought in Jack LaFontaine, kind of signed him, out of college and, straight into the NHL, and it was pretty rough. So, yeah, I could kind of see a similar situation there. Again, I don't see Peretz getting much ice time anytime soon. I think Kochetkov, he's going to get the vast majority of the starts. And yeah, this is going to be an interesting one. And I think whenever Peretz does get put in, it like the Hurricanes' next game is against the Vegas Golden Knights, I believe, here in a couple days. Yes, on the 21st. So here in a few days is when that is. And so, like, I kind of seeing Kochetkov really getting the majority of the starts really for the foreseeable future. I mean, we'll talk more about the Hurricanes upcoming schedule here in a bit, but you look at Vegas, Pittsburgh, New York Islanders, Nashville Predators. These next few games, I just don't see Peretz getting any ice time. Um, so I just think he's a body there to fill a roster spot right now. I don't see him playing much, if at all, to be quite honest, because I just don't see that ending well. Now, next up, it came out yesterday, along with the news of Raanta going to the Wolves, that Freddie Anderson has been medically cleared to skate. So that is fantastic. It's kind of looking like maybe in about a month or so, he'll be back. We'll see how that goes. He hasn't played much at all this season. Um, Played a little bit at the beginning of the year, and looked kind of so-so, but he was having medical issues. So you do factor that into there as well. And I think a month may be a bit soon, just because of he's been out for a while, hadn't really played much this season at all. His medical issues. I don't know if a month is really what it's going to be looking like. I think, yeah, goaltender not expected to be available for at least a month, but could be on the ice within a week. Yeah, so I see it being more probably closer to a month and a half, 2 months. Honestly, I think they are going to want to really make sure he's okay medically, and of course, obviously, in where he needs to be, in terms of the level he's playing at out there. Obviously, we know there's going to be some rust. He's been out since early November, so I don't. I think it would be closer to a month and a half, 2 months before we see him back, which I think honestly is kind of where our next piece of goalie carousel news comes in. Came out this morning shortly before I started recording. Evidently, Aaron Dell is coming to Carolina on a PTO, and we'll see how that goes. Honestly, I think that's just kind of one where the Hurricanes, like I said about Peretz, probably a bit too early for him. They're just kind of bringing him up to be a body. Aaron Dell, God, when was the last time he played? I don't remember if he even played last year. But I know it'd been a bit. He was in San Jose, doing some work, getting himself ready. So the last time he played was last year, 22-23, played 4 games with the San Jose Sharks. One He lost all 3 of those games. So we'll see how it goes. He again, spent several years, 1, 2, 3, 4 years with the Sharks, then went to the Devils, then went to the Sabres, and then back with the Sharks. We'll see how that goes. It's not one I have high expectations for, really. Again, I think it's just them getting an NHL level goalie or a goalie that has NHL experience. It's played over 130 games in the NHL. I think that's really kind of the move they're looking for, just getting a goalie with NHL experience to be there with Kochetkov until either Raanta comes back up till Anderson is ready to come back. That's kind of what I see that move as. I really don't see this being a thing of, oh, they're gonna roll with this, they're gonna roll with the Kochetkov and Dell tandem. I don't see that being the case. I think he's just kind of there to be a body. I think if anything, obviously I want things to go well. I think all Canes fans right now want things to go well for them. Yeah, the Hurricanes have been struggling this year, and I think if anything, best case scenario is probably like a 1 year, two-way deal. They kind of send him down to Chicago, and he's there if they need him. If Anderson ends up having some more health problems, or if he just isn't there, you know, just if things don't go well for Anderson, okay, they can bring him back up. If or again, if Anderson goes out again, they can bring Dell up. They can bring Raanta back up. That's kind of what I see this as. I just kind of see it as them looking to potentially add some depth in the goalie position because they really don't have much at all. Again, they just called up their ECHL goalie. Like it's not a great move in my opinion. But that's kind of all I see this Arundel thing as. But we'll see how things go. This isn't something you can really rush. We don't have a fast forward button or anything like that to see how this plays out. So we just gotta let all of this stuff play out. Raanta going to the AHL, Anderson potentially being about a month away from coming back. Dell on a PTO, Peretz, what's going to happen there? I just we're just going to have to see how all of this plays out. Kochetkov is really, kind of the only thing, that's steady right now for the Hurricanes in terms of the goalie position. So we'll see what happens pretty much. But the Hurricanes are on a 4-game point streak right now. Is there some momentum building with them? Is it just a flash in the pan? We'll talk about that next, right after this quick break, folks. Now, folks, I've talked to you guys a lot about Gametime before, but I do want to continue to tell you about it because it's the holiday season. If you're struggling to figure out what to get, a friend, a family member, whatever, Gametime can help you out with that. There's always concerts. There's hockey games right now. There's basketball games. There's football games. There's plenty of stuff you can surprise your friends and loved ones with for this Christmas. And I've told you about Gametime before, and you shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets for your next big event. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all these sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you with killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seats, and their best price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Again, I've used Gametime before when me and a friend of mine went to AEW Collision a couple months back. We had that view of our seats down in the lower bowl, looking straight at the ring, straight at the ramp, all of it. It was fantastic seats. We could not have been happier. It was fantastic. It was a great deal as well. And I cannot express enough how much I enjoyed that. And again, Gametime, they have flash deals, zone deals, and it's easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. Again, views from all the seats in the venue, so you're not going to get surprised by an obstructed view or anything like that. You know what you're going to be getting. And with their lowest price guarantee, event cancellation, job loss protection, etc., they are really making sure you are taken care of. And of course, they have deals on tickets right up to the start of an event. And even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last minute seats, find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. With zone deals, you pick the section and Game Time picks the seats for an average of 18% savings. And Game Time guarantee means you always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On NHL for $20 off your first purchase. That's code Locked On NHL, LOCKEDONNHL, for $20 off your first purchase with Game Time, folks. Cannot stress enough. I love Game Time. You should too. So again, make sure you go download that Game Time app, create the account, and use that code for $20 off your first purchase. Now, the Hurricanes are on a 4-game point streak right now, which, don't get me wrong, is really good considering the year that they've had so far. And there have been moments of them looking like the Hurricanes we know and love. You look at, their past few games, and they won that game in Ottawa, 4-1 back on the 14th, coming off a pretty abysmal Western Canada road trip. And then the 15th, they go and beat the Red Wings 2-1. Then they come home on the 17th, lose to Nashville in overtime 6-5. And then last night they lost in a shootout to the Washington Capitals 2-1. And there have definitely been some moments in these games where it looks like, all right, they're getting back where they need to be. You look at that Ottawa game, and how it kind of felt like that players only meeting really, kind of lit a bit of a fire under some guys. And then again, they beat Detroit as well. They're on the 15th. They come home against Nashville, and that game was a bit all over the place, and they were able to earn a point. Same with last night against Washington Capitals. That's going to be a tough game regardless, the way those teams have their history. So you kind of knew what you're getting into with that one. I will say Washington's overtime strategy was a bit cowardly. They really didn't do a whole lot there. They just basically, wanted it to go to shootout. They really didn't do a whole lot. Really didn't like that at all. And that was kind of sentiment I gathered from a lot of other folks, is they did not like that overtime strategy at all from the Capitals. And again, goes to shootout. And that was what it was. But there have been some moments where it feels like, all right, they got a little bit of something going. They're on a 4-game point streak, which, if I remember correctly, it hasn't happened this year so far. So that's good, and they are picking up points again. The Nashville and Washington losses are a bit frustrating, but you're still getting points out of them, which I think is a positive, because you're at least getting a point. I mean, it's better than what they were doing. So I look at it like that. They are getting points, and there are flashes. Like, a big thing is, Orlov and Chatfield. They're doing well. They're really building some chemistry and really starting to look good defensively, which is, what I said I felt Dmitry Orlov needed. Was he needed that consistent defensive partner, so he could build that chemistry with them, rather than it constantly flip-flopping between Tony DeAngelo and Jalen Chatfield. He needed that one consistent partner, and now it really looks like he has that, and he's starting to play well, and this defensive pair is looking really, really good. And I don't think they should break it up. They've been rolling 11-7 for a little bit now because Andrei Svechnikov is out, which, I mean, I get it, but, yeah, I'm still not a huge fan of the 11-7 stuff. So, I think, that'll last however long it lasts, honestly. It it is what it is there, we all kinda know what to expect when the Hurricanes roll 11-7, and but I will say, where, like, that 3rd pairing on the defense is starting to look better. Shea and Pesci, they're doing their thing. Um, the 4 I last night, Natchez and Burns were looking pretty rough, but, you know, my main issue now is honestly, it feels like the forward group needs to really step it up. And that's kind of across the board, really. Uh, I mentioned Marty Natchez last night. Jordan Stahl has been kind of meh. And really, it's kind of been everyone, maybe with the exception of like Nazen. He's been pretty consistently good for the Hurricanes. In terms of forwards, it's kinda slim pickings, this year. It feels like they really still have some work to do to really get back to where they need to be. Again, I feel like they're getting something going, it's just taking a little bit. It's like a diesel engine, takes it a little bit to get going. But the forward group definitely, I feel they still need something. Like, that spark is still missing. Again, they have moments in games, but as a whole, it's still been the forward group, it's lacking. It really is, and I think that we're kinda seeing that the management is slowly starting to make some moves. I think, if things don't pick up sooner rather than later, or at least, I don't expect them to go like on a goal scoring palooza or anything like that. Um, but if they aren't showing improvement sooner rather than later, I could see management starting to, if they aren't already, exploring some trades. Um, I could maybe see that. Again, as of right now, I kind of see everyone as fair game, to be honest. Maybe with the exception of Aho, Svechnikov, in terms of the forward group, at least. Aho, Svechnikov, maybe Jarvis. I kind of see everyone else as fair game, to be honest. In terms of guys that could potentially get moved on the defense, Jacob Slavin. That's about it there. I think everyone else is kind of fair game. Um, Goalies, again, I kind of see everyone as fair game there, to be honest. Maybe with the exception, and that's a big maybe with the exception of Kochetkov. I wouldn't say he's untouchable, but I think if the right deal came along, then maybe he could get moved. But they're constantly going back to we like our group, we like our group, we like our group kind of stuff, and it hasn't been working out. And I get, all right, yeah, you want to stick, with the group you made. I get it. I get it. You worked hard to do it, you know, but it does kind of feel like it. What's it gonna take? you know, your head coach is subtly asking for help in the media. Like, what are you doing? And it's getting to the point where it's not even that subtle anymore. He's flat out saying that people aren't buying in. They need to go look in the mirror. You got multiple players on your team saying the same thing. If you don't know who the problem is, hey, ask your head coach, call him into the office, ask him like, hey, who is it? You know, who who's having these issues of buying in, not putting in the effort. Ask him and have those guys under a microscope. And if things don't improve, you figure there's obviously going to be more team meetings, of course. I frankly wouldn't rule out more players only meetings either. And if things don't improve with some of these guys, move on from them. Move on. I've said before, I will say it again. I would rather us miss the playoffs with half AHL roster of guys that are completely bought in, that are all about what the Hurricanes are about and what they do, than to have the roster they have now that on paper was preseason Stanley Cup favorites, and have that roster and half the guys aren't on the same page. I'd rather have that half an AHL roster. Everyone's on the same page. Everyone's going out there and doing their job. I would rather have that. But, it is what it is. I do feel there's slowly some momentum building behind this team. We'll see how things go. Again, they have, some games coming up, and we'll dive into those shortly. But it feels like they may have something building right now, but I am a little hesitant to say that, oh, the Hurricanes are back. I'm hesitant to say that because, just from what they've shown us this season, I just don't know if that's the case. I think it could just be this 4-game point streak could just be a bit of a flash in the pan, to be honest. I really think it could be. We'll see what happens. But you know, we at the end of the day, we just gotta look at the week ahead for the Hurricanes. Not a real busy week this week because of the holiday season coming up, but we will dive into that stuff right after this quick break, folks. Now, folks, as the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. And you're not just limited to the NFL. You can bet on NHL, uh, NBA. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can use there when when baseball season comes back. They're on there as well. So you're going to be covered there with FanDuel. So right now, visit fanduel.com/locked on and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Now, looking ahead at the week ahead for the Hurricanes, in terms of games, not a whole heck of a lot going on. Again, they only had 3 games this week. Uh, the game last night against the Capitals. Then they have the Vegas Golden Knights at home on the 21st on Thursday. And then they're in Pittsburgh on Saturday, the 23rd. So not a whole lot going on this week for them. I think obviously, we're probably going to get more information in terms of goalie situation. I really think that's honestly, we may get more of that later on today or early tomorrow. And obviously, we'll talk about that, as that information comes out. But I think a lot of this week is going to be the off ice roster stuff for the Hurricanes. I think that's what a lot of folks are going to be talking about. The Vegas game is going to be really tough. The Hurricanes right now are sitting at 16, 12, and 3. Vegas is sitting at 21, 6, and 5. The Hurricanes are, having a rough go at it this season. And, I think that's going to be a really, really big test for them. I think, that game against Vegas, everyone is going to have to be on their A game. These guys that are having trouble buying in, they're going to have to be in. They're going to have to, you know, pun not intended, they're going to have to be locked on to this game or locked in. They're going to have to be with this game against Vegas coming up later in the week. They got to be, plain and simple. I think that's going to be a big test. I think that they're really going to have to be at it in practice, getting everyone on the same page. This forward group, where, like I said, I kind of feel like that is leaving a lot left to be desired. They're really going to have to step their game up. The defense, everyone really, the defenseman, Kochetkov in between the pipes, everyone's going to have to be on the same page there. And then, of course, Pittsburgh, they're having a a rough go at it this season as well. Currently sitting at 13-13-3. Yeah, but at the end of the day, we always talk about these Metro Division matchups of how tough these teams play each other. It doesn't necessarily matter what their record is; it's how tough they play against each other. So it's gonna be a tough week for the Canes. But of course, as always, just like with the roster moves and everything like that, we're just gonna have to wait and see what happens. Um, but again, I feel that the majority of this week is going to be dominated by the talk of, what are the Hurricanes going to do with the goalie? Again, we got the Aaron Dell news this morning. How's that going to play out? I don't know. You don't know. None of us know how that is going to play out. We're just going to have to wait and see. Again, it is just a PTO. There's no guarantee like, hey, they are going to sign this guy or anything like that. I think it's just, a cheap, quick option. If we'll see if it ends up being a good option. I don't know. We'll see. Now again, obviously, I want all this to pan out. But I will say, again, there's been a lot of talk about, oh, the Hurricanes need a new goalie. They need a new goalie. They need a new goalie. I think they really, yes, they do, but they also need to get the team in front of the goalie sorted out first. I think the defenseman group, I think that's coming together. I think that's coming together finally. Not perfect by any means, but I think that's starting to come together. Uh, I'm really looking at the forward group here. It feels like, again, they're leaving a lot left to be desired. Nazen really feels like the most consistent one for me right now. Aho, he seems like he's starting to get something behind him. But a lot of the guys there they're just not operating at the level we know they're capable of. So I think they really need to get the team in front of the goalies sorted as well. You can't always blame the goalie. I know they're the ones that typically get blamed, because they let in the puck. But if the team in front of them is playing like crap, then there's only so much they can do. So I think, again, this week is going to be dominated by roster talk of, oh, the Hurricanes are moving this guy, they're looking at that guy. I think that's what this week is really going to be holding for the Hurricanes. And I do hope that this talk doesn't really affect the players in those games against Vegas and Pittsburgh, respectively. I really hope they are able to just zone in on doing doing their job, in those games and getting those wins. Because it does feel like right now some of these guys may be playing for their jobs in Raleigh right now. Um, and that if they don't get on the same page and get their stuff together, then they could be looking for a new house, new apartment, new or in a new city because they're gonna get traded. Sooner rather than later if things don't pick up because this ain't the team it was 10 years ago, where it was a laughing stock, and it's just kind of where you went if you had nowhere else to go. It's not the case anymore. This is a team with expectations, and high ones at that. So these guys got to get on the same page. They got to get their stuff together. I think they will. Again, it feels like slowly but surely they are. But again, I'm hesitant to say that they're back. And because of just what we've seen this year, hesitant to say that. But at the end of the day, we just got to let this stuff play out. We can't fast forward. We got to see what happens with the rest of today and tomorrow. Vegas game, Pittsburgh game. We just got to wait and see what happens. So make sure you're following along at LO_Hurricanes and myself at Jared Ellis _96. Subscribe on YouTube, and I will talk to you guys in the next episode, folks. And as always, let's go Canes.